The second wave has hit Indians hard, but this time there hasn't been a national lockdown. In fact, we're now at the stage where some quarters are calling for a national lockdown to put an end, hopefully, to the spread of COVID-19 and this virulent strain. On the other hand, we are already seeing an impact on employment despite there being no national lockdown. As per the latest data coming in from CMIE, unemployment has jumped to a 4-month high of nearly 8%, that's 7.97% to be precise, and is close to 10% in urban areas. What is the reason for this, and will we see this trend furthering down the road as we continue to grapple with the second wave? To speak on this, I'm joined today by CMIE MD and CEO Mahesh Vyas. Mr. Vyas, thank you so much for speaking with us today. Can you start by taking us through what the latest data tells us from the employment index that you so carefully monitor and put out every few weeks?
The April the labour participation rate, which I consider to be a very important indicator, climbed down a little bit. And the unemployment rate rose significantly. What this means is that a slightly lesser proportion of people came out seeking for work. And even though a slightly lesser number of people came out looking for work, a much larger proportion of them could not find it. So of the people who came to look for work in March, 6.5% did not find work. In April, nearly 8% of those who were seeking work could not find work. That's the unemployment rate. The percent of those people who are seeking work and not finding it. So this shows that India was not able to produce enough jobs for the number of people who are coming to look for it. And although the number of people looking for jobs declined, we saw an increase in the unemployment rate. But this is not, this is a secular trend of a falling labor participation rate and a falling employment rate. So the effect of COVID is yet to be seen. What we are seeing right now is only a gradual decline. The COVID scene is absent, but the fact is because there could be a big increase in the number of daily wage earners losing their jobs. So the explanation is elsewhere.
I want to look a little closer at the state-wise breakup that you've put out for the month of April 2021. And in this, if I'll pick up Delhi, and I'm picking up Delhi because it has been the epicenter really in many ways of the crisis of COVID-19. And there have been series of lockdowns, etc. You are seeing a 27% unemployment rate. Likewise, in Maharashtra, which has been in a lockdown for a while, you are seeing a 5.5% unemployment rate. In Haryana, you are seeing this as high as 35%. Can you explain these anomalies? Are this in line with what you generally see in these states, or are they also reflective of the pace of infections and then its consequent impact on economic activity?
It's like Maharashtra is very large, number one. Number two is very diverse. And number three, there is a fairly large agricultural sector that absorbs a large number of people over there. So unemployment often doesn't go very high there. Whereas in a place like, let us say, Delhi, if a person loses a job, then the person cannot be absorbed in agriculture in Delhi. So unemployment very easily shows up in a state like Delhi. Whereas in Maharashtra, if a person loses his or her job, let us say somewhere in the interiors of Maharashtra, the person is easily absorbed back into agriculture or some such allied activities. Delhi doesn't have that scope. Haryana has a similar characteristic. It's fairly industrial now and has a large services sector which is supported by a large informal employment in unorganized sectors. So it easily shows up an unemployment rate in Haryana, and unemployment in Haryana has been systematically high for a very long time. So these are not anomalies as much as these are characteristics of the region. A large agrarian, relatively low per capita income area is going to show a very low unemployment rate. Haryana has got a high per capita income and will show a high unemployment rate. So these are more structural.
Let's talk a bit about how bad this can get. You mentioned in your first response that we're just seeing the beginning of it and not the full impact of the lockdowns which have been made necessary because of the COVID-19 infections, or even the fact that maybe businesses have not been able to function. Perhaps people have not been able to work because they were infected. Do you see this impact increasing further over the next few months?
Well, it all depends upon the nature of the lockdown. April and May 2020, we saw unemployment rise to 24%. And that was directly linked to the stringency of the lockdown in those months. The moment that stringent lockdown was removed, the unemployment rate came crashing down. It came down to 10% and even less very soon. So the unemployment rate can shoot up if there is a high lockdown. What we have seen in the month of April is nothing because of the COVID situation. We, for example, in April, we lost 7.25 million jobs. 7.25 million jobs. Now, you see the breakup of this. 6 million jobs were lost in agriculture. Now, that's because seasonally, April is not the month when there's too much sowing happening or too much harvesting happening. It's all about procurement in that month. And large parts of the country has got nothing happening in agriculture in that month. And so therefore, agriculture released 6 million people from activities. So maybe, people who are working as laborers in farms have been released. They could not be absorbed easily into other places. So many of them became small-time entrepreneurs, selling small goods, small odds, for example. And therefore, the number of people employed as business persons, self-employed people included, rose by 2 million. So you lost 6 million jobs in agriculture. You got 2 million jobs coming up in business. But we lost 2.8 million salaried jobs. Now that is stressful. That's not only because of COVID. This is a structural decline. This is the third consecutive month where we have seen salaried jobs come down. So I think the stress is here. We are vulnerable. If the lockdown is stringent, it can really throw employment out of gear in a very big way, which can have a very severe impact on the livelihoods of people. So I see the vulnerabilities having increased, the incomes having decreased quite substantially, particularly in the lower strata of the income pyramid. So we are a lot more vulnerable. If the lockdown is stringent, we need to be prepared to help out the people who will get distressed because of the lockdown. That's an important thing to keep in mind.
Let me talk a bit more about these 2.8 million salary jobs. So you're saying about 28 lakh jobs have been lost just in the month of April, and these are your salaried jobs. Why are these jobs being lost in your view? You call them as part of a structural decline, not necessarily to do with the COVID second wave. What are the reasons behind this? Because as far as the beginning of this year was concerned, we were looking at trends reversing. We were all under this misinterpretation that time that, COVID-19, the worst is behind us, etc. Companies have been reporting positive outlook on hiring, but you are saying that jobs have been getting shaved off consistently, especially salaried jobs?
So there is remind you, a large part of these salaried jobs which are lost in the month of April were in rural India. So that means most of them are in fact of the kind that blue-collar workers in factories belong to. Because factories are more often in rural India than in urban India. So I see a lot of blue-collared workers, workers in manufacturing industries losing jobs because of this, because of the structural fall in demand. Manufacturing sector has been very weak, as we have seen. And it is the impact of a very weak manufacturing sector that is getting reflected in manufacturing jobs being lost. So there is a structural shift, we all know, away from MSME sectors to larger companies. So larger companies are doing much better. They're doing quite well, actually, but the small companies are not doing very well. As the small companies are not doing very well and they're not able to survive, they're shedding labor. So capital intensive, high automation, large companies are thriving and making profits. Small companies, labor intensive enterprises are not doing well and they are forced to shed labor.
Just your outlook, Mahesh, on the economic impact we're going to see of the second wave, which at this point we don't know how long it's going to last. No one wants to even hazard a guess. But most agencies have reworked and reviewed their GDP outlook for this year. What is your take on the kind of impact that we could see because of the second wave?
A week ago, we put a note on our forecast for GDP. And we are at the lowest, I think the lowest end of the spectrum of all people's forecasts. But we think really that the economy is not going to revive very well in this year. So most people are saying 11% or so. We are saying 8.7%.
All right. We'll have to wait and see how we can recover, but right now the focus is on saving lives. Livelihoods also do matter, and the fact that we could have lost over 72 lakh jobs just in the month of April, and this is not the full impact of the COVID-19 second wave yet, is truly a frightening one. Thank you so much, Mahesh Vyas, as always, for joining us and explaining the data with all the clarity that you bring.
Thank you.